Welcome back, everybody. The title of our video is Fun with Fractions. Our learning target is I can solve a linear equation. This video is going to kind of combine the first three lessons that we've learned, but now we're going to do the equations with fractions and decimals. Some people are a little scared of fractions and decimals, but as another teacher I used to work with would say, fractions are your friends. And, we're going to try to do some things here to make the fractions a little less scary and make sure you're able to work with them successfully. So we are solving equations still. And the first equation we're going to solve is 3x over 4 plus 4x equals 11/6. So the key to working with fractions, especially when we have addition and subtractions, is we need to find a common denominator. If the denominators are the same, then we can add the fractions. So in order to do that, we need to find the least common multiple of our denominators. And we have this 4x in the middle that doesn't have a denominator, so we're going to pretend that it has a denominator of 1. And so now let's take 4 and 6. We need to find their least common multiple. And we can do this by just counting by 4s and counting by 6s. So let's look at 4. We count by 4. We have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. If we use 6, we have 6, 12, 18, 24. As I look at my list, I see 12 appears on both lists. So therefore, 12 is the least common denominator, and what we can do is we can change all of our fractions into 12ths, and this will make us able to work with them more easily. So in order to change this to 12ths, I need to look at my fraction, my 3x over 4, and I notice 4 is in the denominator, so I'm going to need to multiply that by 3 to get 12. If I multiply the bottom by 3, then I also have to multiply the top by 3. Therefore, if you'll notice, 3 over 3 is just 1. And when I multiply by 1, I don't change the equation. So we're going to do the same thing with 4x over 1. And so I need to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 12 to change it to 12ths. And with the 11/6, I need to multiply the numerator and denominator by 2 to get an equivalent fraction in 12ths. So now let's rewrite, and again remember we multiply fractions straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So 3x over 4 becomes 9x over 12 when we rewrite it as 12ths. 4x turns into 48x over 12, and then 11/6 is the same as 22/12. Now what's really cool here, all the denominators are 12, and equal denominators means equal numerators. So now what I can do is I can just completely ignore the 12s in the denominator, and I can just rewrite an equation out of my numerators. So 9x plus 48x equals 22. And now this just turns into the equations we've been solving all along. I see the left side isn't completely simplified, so I'm going to cover up this side right now. And then I see 9x plus 48x, that simplifies to 57x. And now that that's simplified, let's go ahead and bring back the 22. Divide by 57. And we have x equals 22/57. Okay. Now, the other way you could do this, you could use your calculator. So, if you're kind of confused with the common denominators and fractions, put me on pause right now. Go get your calculator. and we'll kind of show you how you could work through it on that. Okay, so the other way you could do this, again going back to our equation, we could rewrite this as 3/4 x plus 4x equals 11/6. And as you know, we would block out the right side since the left side isn't completely simplified. And on my calculator, if I want to type a fraction, remember I have to put it in parentheses. So I do 3 divided by 4 plus 4, because again we're simplifying and combining like terms, so we add the coefficient. And I'm going to do math fraction, and I get 19/4 x. Now we can bring back the 11/6. And then, as you remember from a few lessons ago, I can either divide this out as long as I use the parentheses in my calculator, or I can just multiply by the reciprocal. So let's multiply by the reciprocal. That's going to get those two things to cross out. And use our calculator. 11/6. Again, make sure you're using your parentheses. Times 4/19. And make sure you hit math fraction. And there's your same answer. X equals 22/57. So you can either work things out using common denominators, or you can use your calculator. So here's our next one. We have 3.5x plus 4/3 equals 9 1/6. Notice we have mixed numbers here. And when we have mixed numbers, it's often a lot easier if we change them into fractions to work with them. I've added another video in my favorites you can use to review changing mixed numbers into fractions if you would like. So I have 3.5x. I'm going to change that into a fraction. And so I do 2 times 3, that's 6, plus 1. That'll be 7/2 x plus 4/3 equals 6 times 9 is 54, and 1 is 55/6. Okay, I look at my denominators, and I'm going to notice that my least common multiple is 6. So let's do one more rewriting. 7x/2 plus 4/3 equals 55/6. And now I'm going to change all of my fractions into 6. So I need to multiply both of those by 3. I need to multiply both of these by 2. So I have 21x/6 plus 8/6 equals 55/6. Just like before, now that all the denominators are equal, now I just have to write an equation with my numerators. And then I just finish solving. -8 minus 8. And I get 47 divided by 21. X equals 47/21. And we're done. And you could also, once you've changed the mixed numbers into fractions, you can use your calculator the way we showed in the previous example. Okay, last one. We have a decimal and a couple other fractions. So let's use our calculator. Let's change this decimal into a fraction right away. So I'll put in 0.65 and I'll hit my math fraction button. And that's going to be 13/20. So 13x over 20 plus 1/3 equals 109/100. So now I look for a common denominator, and that 3 makes things kind of tricky. If we had just the 20 and the 100, it would be 100. But with that 3, the lowest common denominator we're going to have is 300. So that's what we're going to have to work with. So to get 300 here, I'm going to have to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 15. To get 300 here, I'm going to have to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 100. And to get 15 here, I'm going to have to multiply, to get 300 here, I'll have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 3. And now remember, you might be asking, why didn't I just change 1/3 to a decimal? 1/3 is a repeating decimal. So if you use your calculator for that, you're not using the exact value. You'll be rounding, and your answer is not going to be accurate. So change everything to fractions, and now we can work with them. We'll use the calculator to do some of these trickier ones here, like 15 times 13, that's 195, and 109 times 3, that's 327. So 195x over 300 plus 100 300ths equals 327 300ths. Then last thing we do, just go ahead and eliminate the denominators. So 195x plus 100 equals 327. Subtract 100. Divide by 195. Let's just check our calculator if the fraction reduces any further. I don't think it will, but it's always good to check. And we just see it is 227 195ths. So x equals 227 195ths. Okay? And again, once you changed them to fractions, you could have gone and just used your calculator as well. So hopefully you have a few strategies now to tackle fractions, and hopefully when you go try some practice exercises now, you won't be as afraid of them as you were before.